But here's one thing I know about all those flights that I'm going to be hopping on over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to hear the same speech over and over and over again on every single one of those flights, every single one of those connections. It goes like this. In the unlikely event of the loss of cabin pressure, oxygen masks will be dropping from the ceiling. We've probably all heard that speech once or twice. It's one of these situations, right? You've seen these people. Maybe we have an image, I don't know. But anyway, you know what they look like. You don't even need the image. During this woman's little demo on the plane, right, there's this line that has always messed with me. Since the very first time I heard this and sort of process the meaning behind it, they always say to secure your own masks before helping put masks on the people around you. Heard it 1,000 times. And every parent on the plane is thinking, yeah, right, I'm gonna put my mask on my kid before I put it on myself, right? And every wife is thinking, I mean, depends on the day, but maybe I'll put mine on before I put it on him. But the reason they say this is actually pretty simple, right? If you do not get oxygen first, you have no hope of helping the people around you. It'll just be two unconscious people in adjacent seats if you do not help yourself first before you help the people around you. So I think we get that logic at like 30,000 feet in the air. It makes sense to us. The issue is that we often just don't apply it at like real life ground level. We'll follow oxygen protocols on Delta, but ignore it in our actual lives. And so Jesus is going to challenge us here with our ignoring of this concept in real life. So we're back in Mark this week after a brief exit last week for Easter Sunday, back in just the normal rhythmic moving of our way through this Gospel of Mark. And we're still in chapter 1, just started this series together. Today we're looking at verses 35 to 45. If you've got a copy of God's Word in front of you, feel free to scroll to that or flip to that. Would love to have you track along with me today. Of course, the text will be on the screen as well for you. Now, if you were here a couple of weeks ago when Cameron led us through the last passage through Mark 1, the previous few verses, you might remember the snapshots he took us through. And he talked us through this crazy day in the life of Jesus, how just busy he was on this day. And so we are walking into the next sort of chapter here, what happens right after this very busy full day of ministry for Jesus. This day that Cameron walked us through finally comes to its hectic end, and Jesus heads to bed. And then our text picks up with the very following morning from what Cameron walked us through. And here's what it says in verse 35. And rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place. And there he prayed. So here we find Jesus putting on his oxygen mask before he goes out to serve and meet the needs of others. This means for us this morning that the most spiritually mature person to ever walk the face of the planet still needed to tank up before serving others. Not after the work, not after things calm down, but before all of that. It's as if he is saying, I'm not walking into this day gasping for air until I have breathed deeply with my Father myself. But man, what is our typical MO, at least if you're anything like me? We wake up, we grab our phones, and we step straight into the noise, don't we? Then we spend the rest of the day trying to help the people around us, doing whatever it is that we're doing, with a soul that has not even stopped to take a breath, to take a beat yet. We try to lead our organizations while empty. We try to parent while we are just depleted. We try to fulfill our duties at work while we're running on fumes. And then we wonder why we feel so anxious and depleted, and reactive, exhausted, like spiritually just thin day in and day out. But if Jesus, who is actually the Son of God, refuses to run on empty, then I think you and I might want to rethink our strategy about daily living and daily tanking up. So the first thing that we see here is that Jesus gets alone with the Father before the noise cranks up for the day. And notice what Jesus actually does here. Mark highlights 3 intentional movements in Jesus' morning. He gets up early, he gets away, and he gets alone. Early, away, and alone. So what we can gather from this is Jesus is not just like squeezing prayer into his day. He's actually structuring his life, his day around his prayer life. First, he gets up early. And if we are honest, this is already probably offensive to at least half of us in the room this morning already, isn't it? The alarm goes off, we hit snooze. The alarm goes off, we hit snooze. The alarm goes off, we grab our phone. We scroll, we check the news, texts, and email. And before our feet even hit the ground for the day, we have already been discipled by our algorithms and by our notifications. But Jesus, though phoneless in his day, does the exact opposite for us. His example is the exact opposite for us. Before the world starts talking to him and coming to him, he is going to his Father. He is proactive and not reactive. So he's up early. Second, he's getting away. He physically removes himself from the noise of this house where he had done so much ministry in the day before. He removes himself even from the good things. Ministry, good thing, right? He removes himself from that good thing. And that's what I think makes this so interesting, is that he is not walking away from like sinful distractions, from a phone that might distract him with the things of the world, as it were. He is walking away from legit ministry opportunities this morning. People were still there needing helping, needing healing. And Jesus is essentially saying, look, guys, if I do not get alone with my Father, if I don't put on the oxygen mask with him first, I'm not even going to do the right things in the right way. So let me just press this into real life a second here for us, especially if I can just talk to you moms and dads, because I already know the pushback, because I know my own heart. Wait, when do you want me to do this? Have you seen my house? Have you seen the piles of laundry in every single bedroom in my house? I realize that some of you do have tiny humans who wake up like it is their full-time job to destroy your schedule. Not talking about any of y'all, of course. But you, even you, if that is your story, you still need this. You got to pull that mask down and put it on and breathe deeply. Not someday, not when life finally slows down and they're just a little bit older. You need it now. Because your kids do not just need a present parent, they need an oxygenated one. Ruin that one. Which means you're going to have to get intentional about this together. Maybe you got to go to bed earlier. I don't know what it is for you. Tag team it. Maybe one of you takes the early shift one day and the other one takes the early shift the next day. Or maybe it won't be early in the morning at all for you and your fam. That worked for Jesus' schedule, but maybe it won't for you because you have to be up so early for your gig, whatever that might be. That's okay. Maybe it'll mean listening to the scriptures and worship music early on the way in to work for you. I don't mean to prescribe the time for you today. I just mean to prescribe the practice for you today of putting on that mask day in and day out. How can you expect to pour into those little souls if you are running on empty yourself? Because here's the humbling reality for all of us. Your kids, the people that live with you, your roommates, your spouse, they're not just watching what you do, they are learning what matters by what you prioritize. Let that sit on you. Your kids are not just watching what you do. They're learning what actually matters in life by watching what you prioritize in life. And nothing disciples them quite as well as the patterns they see you embracing. So Jesus gets up early. He gets away, and he gets secluded. He goes to a desolate place. Nobody is watching here. Nobody is impressed by what they see of Jesus here. Jesus is not up early posting up early with the Father, #blessed, all right? It is completely obscure. He is by himself doing business with his Father. This is hidden, this is deeply personal, and it is desolate. One author puts it like this. He said, almost anything in life that truly matters will require you to do small, mostly overlooked things over a long period of time. With Jesus. It's a good word. And I wonder if you believe that this morning. So here's a diagnostic question for you. And don't give yourself a pass this morning. Give yourself a real hard look here. Here's the question. What are you becoming by the rhythms that you are embracing? What are you becoming by the rhythms that you are embracing? It's like that song my kids like to play in our house. Man, we've got dust on our Bibles, but brand new iPhones. No wonder why we feel this way. Our joy feels thin and really hard to grasp. Our patience runs out so quickly with our friends, kids, or spouse. Our souls feel just tired all the time. Some of you are trying to live your best Christian life now without spiritually taking a breath first. You are busy. Man, you are so responsible. You are doing good things, earning good money for your families. But underneath it all, there's just no depth right now, no quiet, no sustained time, oxygenating. Is that right still? Man, I'm going to stop saying that word today. Listen, if anyone could skip putting on the oxygen mask, it would have been Jesus. But he does not skip this step, and neither should we. It's not optional. Well, it doesn't take long, like for many of us, where Jesus' quiet place ceases to be a quiet place. Look at verses 36 and 37. And Simon and those who were with him searched for Jesus, and they finally found him, and they said to him, everyone's looking for you. Where you been? They come to him with some urgency here. Everyone is looking for you, Jesus. You can feel like the pressure that's baked into that statement. Like there's needy people around you, bro. Where you been? They're clamoring for you, Jesus. If this were happening today, they would say, Jesus, we are trending right now. What are you doing? We have some traction. It is time to capitalize on this movement and maybe even monetize it, all right? Where you been? And Jesus responds in a way that, at least on the surface, I don't think makes much sense. Look at verse 38. And he said to them, let's go to the next towns, that I may preach there also. For that's why I came. It's the purpose that I came for. Basically, he says, that's great, guys. I hear that the people are looking for me back here. Let's move on. Time to take the next step. This is the moment where many of us would say, God, you are opening doors. There's so many needs here in this town, at this home. But Jesus calls this service opportunity an actual distraction from his assignment. Think about how shocking this response really is. Back in verse 33, consider the scene that was outside of this house. And the whole city was gathered outside of the door, like lined up, trying to get in. They did not go away overnight. If anything, this group probably grew, which is why the disciples say, listen, everyone is looking for you right now, Jesus. And where is Jesus? Not at the front door. He's slipping out the back door. But Jesus, there are still needy people in this house that are desperate for healing, for hope, for help. What are you doing? Turning your back. Still Jesus leaves. Why? Well, he tells us in verse 38. He says it plainly. Because I came to preach. I came to preach. And this is where this gets a little bit more complicated for us, I think, if we really wrestle with what's happening here. Because the reality is, Jesus does not heal everybody that he could heal. It's hard for us to get our minds wrapped around. It's hard for me too. Because we don't just want a God who can heal. We want a God who will heal on our timeline, don't we? I'm guilty of wanting this. I have grieved the reality of God's inconvenient timeline more times than I would like to count. I know there are so many grievous timelines that are represented in this room this morning. You're wrestling in your soul right now about something, some unmet desire or need that you have. And I just want you to know, I genuinely feel this with you this morning. I've wrestled with this week and what you are feeling, and even some things that I'm feeling. From the bottom of my soul, I empathize with what you are wrestling through. Some of you in here are single and you do not want to be. Some of you are struggling with infertility and are just desperate for that to change. Some of you are dealing with a punk boss. I'm not looking at you, Olivia or Mel, this morning. Cameron's not here, but some of you are dealing with a punk boss. Some of you are dealing with wayward children. Some of you, your spouse unexpectedly got called out on deployment, or they're being required to stay much longer than you planned for or than is healthy because of the geopolitical situation that our world is in right now. And I want you to hear this clearly. If I know what you are walking through, some of you I do, some of you I don't. If I know what you are walking through, I am praying for those things alongside of you. day in and day out. Our elders are. I've heard them weep over you just in the last week or two. Our staff carries these burdens with you every single day we are, and we are asking God to move. We really are. We're asking him to heal. We're asking him to intervene. And then the sobering reality of Mark chapter 1 kind of just sits on us uncomfortably, I think, if we're honest. There were still people lined up outside of that home on that morning, like a brand new iPhone had just dropped. The line is long. They're still sick, they're still desperate, and they're still waiting. And Jesus quietly moves on. I felt a version of that just yesterday. I left a funeral yesterday around noon, heavy and quiet. Everything slows down in the wake of death. And then not even an hour later, I'm standing in the line at Lowe's. And it's spring. There's beautiful flowers and new plants springing up everywhere, bright colors, kids laughing in line with their parents, people talking about mulch like it's like the most important thing in the world right now, right? I bought 20 bags of that stuff yesterday. It's on sale right now at Lowe's, $2 a bag. I'm just telling you, all right? And I just stood there thinking to myself, how can these two things be true at the exact same time? Death in one room and delight in the next. And that's life. It is a complex cocktail of joy and grief. It's usually not one after the other. Often they stack on top of each other, day in and day out. And Jesus simply does not relieve all of it the way that we would want him to. And I cannot fully untangle that reality for us this morning. I wish I could. Anybody who tells you that they can untangle that reality neatly probably has not sat at enough hospital beds and hospital rooms at the end of someone's life. But here's what I do know. Though I can't untangle that, here's what I do know. Jesus did not come so that people would be so consumed with what he could do for them that they missed him, the person, altogether. One more time. Jesus did not come so that people would be so consumed with what he could do for them that they missed him, the person, altogether. This is because we so often miss why Jesus even came. He did not come to make hard lives a little easier. He came to give us something way better than hard lives made a little bit easier. Over and above suffering, over and above your fixed problems, clear biopsies, and happy Instagram feeds, he came to offer himself. And if we're honest, maybe if you're honest in this moment, this kind of seems like a disappointing answer to the question, right? I want my stuff fixed. Jesus doesn't feel like enough some days. Like I thought Jesus would come and really make all the bad things in life go away if I only confessed my faith in him and repented of my sin and came to him for life. So it can feel disappointing to hear that Jesus is all we get until you realize that that is the only answer in all the world that actually lasts, that will outlast all the pain and the grief that you're wrestling through now. That when we truly turn our eyes upon Jesus, like that old hymn says, and look at him in his wonderful face, all the things of this world will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Believe that afresh this morning. If that is not your experience of Jesus today, I would want you to know that it is possible. There is a joy that can overwhelm the grief. It doesn't do away with it, but it puts it in perspective. But the temptation for so many of us is that it is possible to want Jesus' power and to be indifferent to his presence. We want him to do stuff more than we want him. It's like when I travel, like I'm about to in the next couple of weeks, obviously I always tell my kids goodbye, hug them, kiss them, pray with them. But somewhere in that little speech that I'm giving to them, how to like behave for mommy and care for her and love her well, somewhere in the back of their minds, they're already thinking, he's coming back and he's probably coming back with something for me. When I travel, I usually do come back with something for them, like a little souvenir, a treat of some kind, something small that says, I was thinking about you while I was away from you. And I love coming home. I love that moment when the door creaks open, right? It's one of my favorite moments in life. The door swings open, the chaos, the hugs, the "Daddy, we missed you" banner in the living room. Pro tip, if that's waiting for me, you look out, what's coming, all right? But imagine this. Imagine this with me for a second. Imagine I walk through the door after being gone for a week, and instead of hugs, instead of eye contact and joyful smiles, instead of "we missed you, Daddy" and the banner on the wall, the very first thing I hear is, "What'd you get for me, Dad? What'd you get?" No welcome home. No, I love you. Just where's my stuff? That would hit different, wouldn't it? Because in that moment, I'd realize they weren't really waiting on me. They were waiting on what I could bring to them after being away from them. And I think we are all tempted to treat Jesus the same way. We are tempted to not want him, but instead want what he can do for us, what he can fix, what he can give, what he can change. Listen, I know the waiting and the silence is not easy. I've been there. I am there. This does not make the sting of unanswered prayers or what feel like unanswered prayers go away. But it does mean this. Even when Jesus does not give us what we are most hoping for, he is still giving us what we most need, himself. Got to rest in that. Jesus, he did not just come to heal diseases. He came to heal souls, primarily, which leads us to our next observation. Jesus refuses to let good things replace the main thing. He refuses. The crowds believe that their greatest need is relief. They want their bodies fixed, but Jesus knows their deeper need and ours. So he says, I came for something more than that. Look at verses 38 and 39. Let us go on to the next towns, that I may preach there also, for that is why I came. And he went throughout all of Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons. Again, our greatest need is not temporary relief of what we're faced with today. Our greatest need, your greatest need, is rescue, not for something from today, but from something on the last day, your final day. And that rescue comes through the proclamation of a message. Now, buckle up, all right? Because you are about to hear from the preacher that you need more preaching, all right? Isn't that such a surprising thing to hear this morning? But I think we can argue from this text that preaching matters a little bit more, maybe than all of us would at first realize. Listen, God only had one son, and he made him a preacher, all right? A preacher of the word. So Christianity is at its very core a religion of the word of God. It's not built primarily on experiences or emotions or vibes that you feel during your favorite worship song. Not that any of those things are wrong, but the whole message of Christianity is primarily built on a message that is announced, declared, and proclaimed. And I think this is where many of us in here get challenged. Some of us have quietly begun to believe that the preaching moment is no longer all that relevant. We may think it's outdated. Maybe some of us think it's optional. But listen, this is not a TED Talk, all right? I do my best to make it not a TED Talk, though I get accused of TED Talks every once in a while, all right? It's not. This is a declaration of the living Word of God that will absolutely upend your life, your priorities, and your pursuits in a way that will leave you feeling more fulfilled than you could possibly imagine if you let it dictate to you rather than you dictating to it. Jesus said, preaching is what I came to do, and I'm going to do it. Which means if we sideline the word, we are not just tweaking Christianity, we are redefining it altogether. So we have to ask an uncomfortable question of ourselves this morning. Do my life rhythms actually reflect what matters to Jesus matters to us? Do my life's rhythms reflect that what actually matters to Jesus matters to me? Because we like to say the word does matter deeply to us, but our calendars tend to tell the truth about us, don't they? Is this something that I show up for only when I have the time? Nothing else is going on if my schedule kind of allows me? If preaching was central to Jesus, it should not be optional for us. So this is what he does. He keeps the main thing the main thing. Even though there are plenty of other good things back at that house that he could have been doing. Just as a brief aside here, I want to pause for a second because I want to anticipate a question that maybe some of you are asking, or maybe none of you are asking. I'm going to make you ask the question of the text, okay? In verse 39, if you're following along, we hear about Jesus casting out demons like they were everywhere back in the day. And then you look around your very quiet, suburban, safe street, and you think, so what, like, did the demons retire? Because I don't see any of those guys these days. And I think it's a fair question to ask. Like, why does our lived experience not really match that experience? So let me give you a few anchors this morning so you don't have to choose between being thoughtful about the word and believing the word. Did the demons retire? No. First, the ministry of Jesus is a unique moment in history. When Jesus shows up, he is not just teaching. He is confronting the kingdom of darkness like it has never been confronted before and won't be again. He's confronting it as the only one who could truly challenge the kingdom of darkness. And the opposition is not happy about it, and they're doing something about it. Jesus' arrival was an invasion of their domain, and they have not been rivaled at all, really. So there's this kind of concentrated spiritual conflict when Jesus came to live among us all those years ago that was never going to be like the baseline experience of demonic activity throughout the course of history. But let me also say this. Did demons retire? No, demonic activity can look different across cultures and contexts. Demons did not disappear. They just got better PR, an incredible rebrand, and they ditched the pitchforks, okay? Not that they ever had pitchforks. It's just the way that we've begun to draw them in modern day. I don't know why. In some places around the world where the gospel hasn't taken root as deeply maybe as it has in America and infected the culture like it has in the West, you'll still hear about the kinds of things and demonic activity that you read about in the Gospels. Crazy, uncomfortable stuff. Oppression that is obvious and very disturbing. But here, like in a more secular Western context, evil doesn't often show up like in terrifying ways like we read about in the Gospels. It's often actually more insidious than that because it shows up looking very normal. And that's actually where its danger lies. It's respectable. It doesn't need to throw someone on the ground foaming at the mouth. It can just keep you numb to the things of eternity. It doesn't need to make you scream. It can just keep you scrolling. No one's walking into your office levitating tomorrow morning, but plenty of people are walking into the office quietly enslaved to approval of those in your office or online. Anxiety absolutely runs their life. Image is everything to them, and they're exhausted trying to keep up. No one's breaking chains in the street with demonic strength, but we've got chains of addiction everywhere around us. Private, hidden, respectable addictions that act like chains in our lives. Nobody can see it, maybe. Nobody really talks about it, but it is absolutely owning people and depressing people. Same demonic darkness, just dressed nicer for us cultured Americans. A third reason I thought of, did demons retire? No, but also not everything is a demon, okay? Even though some things are demons. Some people see a demon behind every little inconvenience that we face. Flat tire, demon. Bad Wi-Fi, definitely a demon, all right? Others swing in the opposite direction and explain everything away as purely psychological or just medical situations. The Bible does not let us do either of those, fall into either of those traps. It gives us categories for both physical brokenness and spiritual opposition. C.S. Lewis said it like this: there are two equal and opposite errors into which our race, humanity, can fall about the demons. One is to disbelieve in their existence, and the other is to believe and to feel an excessive, unhealthy interest in them, a demon behind every rock. So if you are here and you are skeptical, you do not need to pretend like demonic activity is not strange, because it is strange, but it is real. So the bigger question for us this morning is not, why don't I see this as much as I see it in the Gospels? The bigger question is, who is this Jesus that even the forces of darkness must obey him and submit to him? So as we transition into the final movement this morning, we see that just because Jesus refuses to let good things replace the main thing does not mean that the main thing is the only thing. Let me say that one more time. Wrestle with this. Just because Jesus refuses to let good things, people back at the house, replace the main thing, preaching the word, does not mean that the main thing, preaching the word, is the only thing. Jesus is intent on gospel proclamation, but he is not indifferent to gospel demonstration. So as Jesus is out preaching the good news in those other towns, like it says, verses 40 to 42 say this, a leper came to him, imploring him and kneeling, said to him, if you will, can you make me clean? Moved with pity, Jesus stretches out his hand, and touches him and said to him, I will, be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him, and he was made clean. So if you watch the pattern of Jesus' life, like his MO from city to city, his MO from town to town, he goes into a place, he proclaims the word, and then he proves what he has just proclaimed is actually true. That is his consistent pattern. Proclaim, then prove. Proclaim, then prove. He doesn't just announce the kingdom, he embodies the perfect culture of heaven. And this is where this rhythm of Jesus turns on us. Because Jesus says, we are sent in the same way that he was sent. He says, as the Father has sent me, so I am sending y'all. So I'm sending us. So let me make this painfully practical for us this morning. I want to ask you, where are you denting the darkness right now in the rhythms of your life? We've been circling around this theme since January. The idea of making all these little small gospel dents in the darkness around us. We actually saw a glimpse of this just a few minutes ago with our sister V, didn't we? That's what this looks like, traveling somewhere to put a dent in the oppression. But it's not just her mouth that proclaims the hope of Jesus. It's now her life that matches her words about Jesus. It puts the gospel on actual display, a rescue mission from V. She's embodying the truth of the gospel. But I think praying over someone like V this morning, while it's valuable and amazing, and we should do that, it could confuse us, I think, if we're not careful in thinking about this. Let's not pretend like the mission is somewhere else over the ocean. That's where we go to put dents in the darkness. Usually it's just across the street from you, or right next door, or across the cubicle from your colleague at work. There are neighborhoods and workplaces and schools and homes right here in the 757 where the darkness needs you to help push it back. So what does that look like for you? Who is the person in your life right now? Just take a second and a beat. Who is struggling? Who is hurting in your life cycle right now that you could move toward instead of moving around because it's uncomfortable? Maybe it's a coworker that everyone avoids because they're awkward, and you would agree. My guy is awkward. But what do we find Jesus doing here? Leaning in, not away. You don't need a sermon for them. You just need a couple of intentional minutes with them. Eye contact. Treating them like they actually matter. Like they're human beings created in the image of God with dignity because they are created in the image of God. Maybe it's someone in your life who is sick, who is grieving, who's just worn down. Instead of just saying, oh, I'll pray for you, and then immediately forgetting, maybe you just stop right then and there, despite the awkward moment, and you put your hand on them like Jesus puts his hand on the leper, and you pray with them, and you pray for them. And that touch helps you feel that you're present with them and not just ditching them. Instead of feeling bad, you actually step in to meet a financial need or a physical need for a friend. You bring a meal, you cover a bill, you watch their kids so they can breathe for a minute. Proclaim the truth, then prove it. It's Jesus' pattern, and it should be Anchor Church's pattern. Let's not overcomplicate this. You don't need this platform to preach the gospel to the 757. You don't need a microphone, and you don't need a passport to go overseas to dent the darkness. You just need to pay attention to the paths that God has you on, and then do the next loving, obedient thing right in front of you. Okay, so Jesus reaches out. He touches this man and he heals him. But I think this moment is poignant, but it's hard for us to feel this in modern day America because of Western medicine. We just don't quite have our minds wrapped around how bad this situation was that this guy was faced with. We hear leprosy and we think, poor guy, bad skin situation he was working through right there, but this is not what this was, leprosy. Leprosy in the ancient world was absolutely devastating. It attacked the nerves in the body, which meant you would begin to lose sensation in certain parts and eventually all parts of your body. You could not feel pain. You could not feel injury, which at first seems like awesome, right? Seems like superhero. But then you realize that you would get wounds and not even realize it. And so infections would set into these wounds. Skin would fester, and over time it would spread to all parts of your body. As the leprosy progressed, small red spots would grow up on your body and spread to all parts of your body. Your hair would fall out. I don't have leprosy, all right? Your nails would loosen, and in severe cases, fingers and toes would even be lost. It was a slow, visible, absolutely appalling, disgusting disease. It was a death sentence, a visible death sentence. But honestly, even with all that description, the physical part of the sickness was only part of it, and maybe not even the worst part of it. Maybe the worst part was the social death sentence that you would have to work through if you had leprosy. Listen, before there was Tony Fauci, there was Leviticus 13. I knew I would get you all back engaged if I used the name Tony Fauci this morning, all right? This is not me defending or begrudging or judging the man, all right? Even if you want me to this morning, I won't go either way. It's just me getting your attention. Check this out from Leviticus 13. The leprous person who has the disease shall wear torn clothes and let the hair of his head hang loose, and he shall cover his upper lip. Does that sound familiar to anybody? And cry out, unclean, unclean. And he shall remain unclean as long as he has the disease. He is unclean. He shall live alone. There's your social distancing. His dwelling shall be outside the camp, even worse than 6 feet. He's covering his mouth. He is maximally social distance. And so just imagine this. Like if you're faced with this, imagine walking through Wegmans across the street later today trying to get some groceries for lunch. And every few steps having to shout out, unclean, unclean, stay away from me. Because people would need to stay away from you because you're lethal, you're gross, and your skin is just oozing everywhere. That's this guy's story. That's his life story. This is the man who walks up to Jesus, and this brings us to our final observation about Jesus. Jesus moves toward those everyone else keeps their distance from. Jesus moves toward those everyone else keeps their distance from. Do not move too quickly past how Jesus heals this man. Because what Jesus does next is not just powerful, it's actually shocking. At least it was back then. Remember, they were living outside the camp. They couldn't even get access to anyone, let alone Jesus. And Jesus touches them, which means that Jesus is not just willing to heal the man, he is willing to be seen with him, in proximity to him, and associated with him. Under Jewish law, if you even touched a leper, you became unclean yourself. It only worked in one direction. Contamination moved from the unclean person to the clean person. The clean person never reverse contaminated the unclean person to make them clean. It's not how it worked. You always became unclean if you touched the sick person. But when Jesus comes, the opposite happens. For the first time in history, instead of the uncleanness spreading to Jesus, cleanness flows from Jesus to the unclean man. That's different than anything the history of the world has ever seen to this point. And so after Jesus heals this man, he tells him to do something surprising. You can see it in verse 43. He says, listen, I'm so glad that you were healed, but don't tell anybody. And I'm not going to unpack why he says that this week, all right? This idea of this messianic secret surfaces over and over and over again in Mark, and we're already going too long this morning, so I'm not going to talk about it today. If you want to find out why Jesus keeps it to himself, at least for a little while, come back, and I'll tell you, all right? Little intrigue there for you. But he says something else in verse 43. He says, now, don't tell anybody, but also do go tell the priest. Go show the priest the healing that you've experienced. And so in Leviticus 14, back in the Old Testament, God had already laid out what to do if a leper was ever cleansed. There's this whole process they had to work through. And here's how it worked. All right, you can turn to Leviticus 14 later today if you want and check this out. But the priest would go outside the camp to where all the lepers were hanging out and living. He would go outside the camp to examine the person that was cleansed from the leprosy, because that's where they lived. And if he was found to be clean, this leper found to be clean, there's this whole ceremony, this whole sacrificial ceremony that they had to go through. So they would take these two birds. One was killed, and the blood of that bird was mixed with water. And the other bird was dipped into that mixture and then sent to fly away, released. And then that leper, after this ceremony, would be freed to rejoin the community inside the camp. And the order is important. Sickness required death of birds, but then came cleansing, followed by restoration and inclusion in the community. And if you're paying attention just a little bit, it should sound just a little bit familiar to you this morning, because at the cross, when Jesus' side was pierced, what came out? Water mixed with blood, the same mixture that we see happening in this Leviticus 14 passage. It's almost as if God was whispering all along to us, so we didn't know it yet. The only way unclean things are made clean is through blood. And now on this side of the cross, we know it's not the blood of birds that ultimately cleanses us. It's the blood of the God-man, the Son of God, King Jesus. Well, the priest would then be able to declare this man clean. But here's the thing. As far as we know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, email me this week. I think this ceremony in the Old Testament had never been used. In the entire Old Testament, there's only one clear story of someone being healed or cleansed of leprosy, and it was not even an Israelite. It wasn't a Jew. It was a Gentile, Naaman, so he would not have gone to the priest for this kind of cleansing, which means for generation after generation after generation, this little weird tradition just sat there in Leviticus, untouched, collecting dust. No priest walked to work thinking, might need Leviticus 14 today, all right? They didn't think that. It was never used. So imagine what this could have looked like. The man walks up to the priest and says, I'm clean. I'm finally clean after all these years. And the priest is like, hold on. I think I remember reading something about this. Let me find the chapter. And he dusts it off, and he starts reviewing this bloody procedure for the first time in centuries. It's almost like it was written all those years ago for this very moment right here. And what is Jesus doing? He's signaling that something very important is coming, something transcendent that the world has never seen before. Someone greater is here. Leviticus 14 is finally about to be needed and fulfilled. The cleansing one is here. This is different. This is new. But do not miss what this must have felt like for the man, because he had not been touched in years. You ever thought about like the warmth and comfort of touch of someone you know and love? A shaken hand, a hug, a fist bump. The Gospel of Luke shares one additional detail, a gruesome one, about this guy. Luke tells us that this guy was full of leprosy. So the disease had processed or progressed to its terminal stage. In other words, this had been a reality for this guy for many years, infected with this disease. He is full on disgusting looking and disgusting smelling. No one wants near this guy. So everyone's avoiding him. People cross the street to get away from him. If he had a wife, he had not felt her embrace in years. If he had children, he had never bent over to hug them in years. No handshakes, no high fives, no fist bumps. And then Jesus does not step back like we would. He leans in and he touches him for the first time in years. This is where this should turn on us, because if we could actually see who God is, the holiness he represents and embodies, we probably would not walk into our Sundays here at the Sandler Center like we're just attending another show here. Coffee in hand, half distracted, sliding into our seats whenever we get here. We would come in sober, aware, weighty with what we get to do together. We would be the ones backing away and covering our faces and saying, unclean, unclean, God, you cannot draw near to me. Don't draw near to me. And if we're honest, probably some of us in here this morning are feeling this way today. Some of you carry things in from your past this morning that you hope nobody ever finds out about. Some of you have sins that you've just fought for years and you're just tired because you keep losing. Some of you have quietly believed, yeah, Jesus forgives, but not this guy. Not what I've done. But here's the good news this morning. Because Jesus does not stay at a distance. He draws near. And in touching this man, he is doing more than healing him. He is beginning to actually trade places with him. Look at verse 45. The man ignores Jesus' request that he not tell anyone but the priest. He just goes and tells all his friends, probably like we would be tempted to if we got healed. He went out and began to talk freely about it and to spread the news so that Jesus could no longer enter the town. He was too popular, but he was the one out in desolate places. What? Jesus trades places with this guy. The man walks freely back into the city, and Jesus is left out in the desolate places. So at the cross, this moment explodes with clarity for us this morning. So we pull this to a close. All of our uncleanness, all of our shame, all of our guilt and sin is placed on Jesus, and somehow he absorbs it in his body on the tree. And in exchange, he gives us his cleanliness, his righteousness and beauty, his standing. He gives us his standing before the Father. The unclean are brought in because of him, and Jesus goes outside the camp because of our uncleanness. He's treated like the outcast, which means we get to be welcomed into the family like sons and daughters, which means there is no version of your story, no part of your past, no pattern of sin that makes Jesus step back and say, stay away from me. Nothing. So let Jesus draw near this morning. He was willing to come near the leper, and he is willing and eager to come near to you. Okay, I want to leave you with one simple takeaway from each of our main points this morning, and I'll let you go. The band can join me up here now. First, stop running on empty. I just want to ask you a question. When are you going to meet with God this week? When are you going to do it? Where is it going to happen? Because this will not happen accidentally in the rhythms of your life. Your phone has a plan for your morning. Your inbox has a plan for your morning. Your kids definitely have a plan for your morning. If you do not have a plan, you will lose. And no one accidentally drifts toward a life with Jesus. Left on our own, we do not drift toward prayer, we drift toward distraction. So decide. Even if it's imperfect, decide on a plan. Don't run on empty, get some oxygen. Second takeaway, don't settle for good things over the main thing. Don't settle for good things over the main thing of sitting under the word of God. Don't do it just occasionally. Don't do it when it's convenient. Do it as a settled conviction of your life. Because Jesus says, this is why I came. We ought to take our cues from Jesus and not treat it like an optional add-on to our week. Third and final takeaway, move toward the people that everyone else avoids. Because this is what Jesus does for you and for me. He touches what everyone else refuses to touch. Man, as I reflected on my own life this week, I'm really careful about our doctrine, and we should be. I'm careful to articulate the gospel with clarity. I can debate theology, but man, at some point, we have to lay some hands on the rotting flesh of our neighborhoods. Not literally. Relax. We're not starting a leper colony this week, okay? But real people in real messes with real brokenness need us to draw near and not shrink away. Because we cannot expect this to be the job of missionaries who go somewhere else to do this. Who's going to be a missionary here? We ought to be. A church that does not regularly place its hands on the broken, messy, inconvenient humanity around it has missed the point. We're not living the mission. So where is that for you? I don't know what that's going to look like in your life, but I want to encourage you to move toward them, not to fix them, but to bring them near to the one who can fix their souls ultimately. Be present with them, listen to them, and care for them. Because we are not just people who believe in Jesus, who touches the unclean. We are people who follow him into that uncleanness. Now comes the part of our gathering when we come to this table. And I want to encourage you to remember what we've just seen. Jesus touched the unclean and began to trade places with the unclean. He went outside so that we could be brought inside to the family. So this table is not for people who have it all together. It's for those who know they don't have it together, and Jesus does in their place. It's for those of us who are done keeping our distance from the God of the universe, and instead, with confidence and courage, draw near, because he has performed in our place and given us access to the Father. So if you're trusting in Jesus this morning, come and receive at this table. If you're still holding Jesus at arm's length, this table is not for you. But I challenge you to consider why he's at arm's length, because this table is a reminder. The only way the unclean are made clean is through his body and through his blood. I hope you'll come, eat, and drink of that this morning. Before you come, a member of our prayer team is going to pray for us, and then you can come right away to eat and drink at this table.